Hello there guys, RMP792 here. It's been a while. That wasn't entirely intentional on my part. I didn't really mean to have a long break, but life being life, things got in the way and just for whatever reason I've just not been in the right sorry, getting over a cold. I've just not been in the right mental place to try and record anything. Nope, thought I was going to cough again, but I managed to avoid it. If I do that, I apologise again. Getting over a cold. There goes my phone. But yeah, the reason that I finally got round to making something again, or just again talking to camera, is because a friend of mine pointed out to me that I haven't put anything up on this channel in quite a while, and he thinks it's good for me for whatever reason. So I figured, oh well, I'll come up with a topic and do a vlog. And again, going back to the conversation I was having with him a while before, we'd been discussing Doctor Who, and specifically we were talking about the Time Lords and how would we reintroduce the Time Lords into New Who, because we know they're back now. After the events of Hellbent, Heaven Sent, whichever way around those two are, we know the Time Lords are now back, but they didn't really do anything. They haven't done anything for a while. So the question is, what would we do with the Time Lords? How would we bring them back into prominence within New Who? Because I like the concept of the Time Lords. I like the concept of the Doctor actually being scared of them, because hey, they've got a lot of power, cosmically speaking. That they can manipulate time if they want to. They can pluck you out of your timeline and erase your memory and force you to regenerate into all sorts of scary stuff that they used to do back in the old show. But in New Who, they've been mostly gone, and when they turn up, they've either been completely crazy or just completely ineffectual. So the place I would start with bringing the Time Lords back in is the Celestial Intervention Agency. Now, if you're not aware, this is, to all intents and purposes, the Time Lord version of, well, the Central Intelligence Agency. There's a reason why they're both called the CIA. But yeah, the Celestial Intervention Agency is, to all intents and purposes, a secret-ish group within Time Lord society who basically will screw with the timeline when they think it's necessary. So for example, there's some implications that it was probably them who sent the Doctor to Skaro in Genesis of the Daleks. You're never entirely and again, the thing about the CIA is they're notoriously kind of grey, morally speaking, so you're never quite sure how much approval they actually have from the Time Lord High Council, or if it's just a case of, we will give you a budget, you will do the stuff that we don't want to know about. And you're never entirely sure how much oversight they have, which is always interesting in any kind of secret spy groupy thing. So the other main thing that the CIA are sort of known for is Season 7B. If you're not aware, this is a fan theory that fixes a bunch of continuity problems, because Doctor Who is rife with continuity problems, and because we're all massive nerds, we like to find ways to fix them. And Season 7B was a really, really fun way of doing it, because basically, there's a Sixth Doctor story where he meets up with the Second Doctor. And the Second Doctor has basically been sent there by the Time Lords on a mission. The problem, continuity-wise, is that the Second Doctor's only encounter with the Time Lords is when they catch him at the end of the War Games. Well, I say catch him. He sends a message to them because he needs their help, and then attempts to leg it before they get there and doesn't quite manage to get away. So they catch him and they put him on trial, and then they banish him to Earth. And they also force him to regenerate. So that's the last time that we ever see the Second Doctor, as the main Doctor. So not counting multi-Doctor stories later. However, so the fact that he turns up working for the Time Lords later doesn't make sense from a continuity standpoint, which is where Season 7B comes in, because Season 7 was the one that ended with the War Games. It was the last one that had the Second Doctor in. So Season 7B is basically a theory that in between his trial and his arrival on Earth, he was taken by the Celestial Intervention Agency and basically turned into one of their agents. Sooner or later, he had to regenerate and end up back on Earth. There's no reason why they couldn't make use of him in the meantime. So the second Doctor was presumably pootling around the galaxy for a while doing jobs for them, until eventually they said, right, time to put you back where you're supposed to be, and then they booted him out. Then he transformed into John Pertwee and got booted out the TARDIS at the beginning of Spearhead from Space. So that's kind of what the CIA does. They're a bit sneaky. And you could have some interesting fun with this. So, when my friend asked me to basically pitch him my idea for how to bring the Time Lords back in, my comment is you start with just your normal Doctor Who episode. They're dealing with some sort of monster. Something. Again, it's Doctor Who. Do something fun and interesting. But at one point in the episode, there's like a montage of people. So it's they're looking at talking to witnesses to an event or something like that. The Doctor's talking to someone and the companions are talking to someone else, and since we've got 3 companions now, you have them split up, and the Doctor's right. I'll talk to this group, you talk to that group, you talk to that, so on and so forth. And one of the particular people there offers up some useful piece of information that helps put them in the right direction, but also gets them into serious danger because Doctor Who. And you don't cast anybody famous as this sort of one or two line person. You don't maybe it's somebody who's just been on I don't know some soap or something like that. Somebody who's an upcoming actor, but not not one of these cameos where you go, oh, it's that person. Not unless you happen to have seen something they've done previously. So maybe somebody who's had a minor role in a soap or a drama or something. It's the BBC. You've got a decent selection of pretty good actors. But again, you don't want this to be Brian Blessed or anything like that. No household names. So you just think, okay, so that was some random guy who had some helpful information because he saw something. Fair enough. And they spoke to say Ryan. And then in the next episode, we're doing spacey stuff and something fun and interesting. And wait a minute, that guy looks vaguely familiar. Didn't we see him in a previous episode? Have they just accidentally used the same actor twice? Tut, lazy writers or lazy casting department. But again, you make sure that this time he doesn't see Ryan or whoever it was who he was talking to in the previous episode. He sees Yaz. And he talks to her and gives her some useful information that gets them into a lot of danger. And then, maybe third episode doesn't appear. And then fourth episode he turns up again and does the same thing again, but with a different companion. And you eventually realise that it's the same person cropping up again and again and again. And every time his interference makes things more interesting. He points them effectively in the most dangerous possible route through a job or adventure, whatever you can call it. You know what I mean. And eventually, the group encounters him, and all 3 companions suddenly go, "Wait a minute, I've seen you before." And they all realise, or maybe he slips up, maybe he gets spotted on a scanner or something like that, and maybe I've got this scene in my head where one of them sort of looks at him and goes, "Huh, that's weird. He looks a bit like a guy I met back on Planet Q or whatever." I'm spitballing random ideas here. So and then one of the others looks over and goes, "Oh, that's weird. He looks kind of like a guy I met back on Earth." And then they all 3 look at him and go, "Wait a minute." They have this realization that they've all met this guy, but at different points in space and time. And then finally, the Doctor sees him, and it's an established point of canon that Time Lords always recognize each other. It doesn't matter what incarnation somebody is in. If you look at a Time Lord, you go, "Oh, hi, Steve." Again, I don't think there's any Time Lords called Steve, but... So at that point, you have it revealed that this guy is a member of the Celestial Intervention Agency, and it's somebody the Doctor's met before. And again, you don't have to clarify exactly when. It's just, this is a Time Lord that the Doctor knows. So for those of us who like, old Who, you can imply that, maybe it's, season 7B, or maybe it's, some other Time Lord who we've encountered before, or even just somebody the Doctor knew at the Time Lord Academy or something like that. Again, this is one of those things that I think you don't have to spell out, and probably would be a bit better if you don't. Because sometimes, you don't want to spell everything out, because frankly, you don't need to a lot of the time. That's just a fact. Sometimes a little bit of mystery actually is very beneficial. Because again, this is the kind of show that benefits from having lots of ridiculous fan theories and stuff like that. So eventually the Doctor figures out that somebody has been screwing with her, and that they pin him down somehow, and eventually he admits that he's been following the Doctor because he needs her help, because he thinks there's a mole in the CIA. There's somebody in the agency doing something very, very dodgy, and he needs help in order to root them out and figure out what's going on. And he thinks that, as somebody who used to work for them, but is completely outside of Time Lord society, and has more importantly been shown that they have one hell of a moral compass, the Doctor is pretty much the only person he can trust to help root out this mole and figure out what's going on. So the Doctor is eventually talked into helping rather unwillingly. Again, maybe there could be some sort of bit of duress, or maybe it's just a simple case of if you don't, the entire universe could be at risk. Yada yada yada. There's interesting ways to get the Doctor to agree to help. And so eventually, she agrees to go back to Gallifrey, and we get to see a bit more Gallifrey. We get to see the various ridiculous fashions of the Time Lords. Because I'm a fan of the Time Lords' ridiculous giant headpieces and stupid things like that. And maybe see some more of Time Lord society. There's a whole bunch of stuff relating to Time Lord society that got established either in Old Who or in the expanded canon that I would love to see come back. Stuff like the various prides that they had, and things like that, and different clans and social groups. So there's all sorts of interesting stuff you could do. Introduce some interesting ideas about Time Lord society, and again, stop making Time Lord society quite so human. It's stuff like in was it Day of the Doctor, the 50th anniversary one, where he goes to a barn which has a tractor tire in it and stuff like that, and you're like, wait, this is meant to be Gallifrey? I appreciate it's established that Gallifrey has effectively its own version of the Amish, which are Gallifreyans who choose not to use advanced technology. Anything beyond 1950s tech, they will not touch. So the fact that there's a sort of barn, it makes some sense, but But yeah, so that is something I'd love to see. And then you get the latter half of the season where the Doctor is basically having to do jobs for the Celestial Intervention Agency in order to prove herself to the upper ranks, and sort of get in their good books. So that again gives you lots of potential for some interesting adventures, while also having some interesting moral quandaries in it. The CIA wants her to do something a bit dodgy. Can she find a way to complete the mission that doesn't require doing the dodgy thing to all intents and purposes? So you could have some very interesting stuff there. And then the last few episodes of the season are basically focused around the whole, traitor at the heart of the CIA. And at this point, we've established a bunch of recurring characters within the CIA. So you've got the guy who was trying to help, trying to get her help. You've got, the current head of the CIA. Maybe you've got a member of the High Council or something like that. Again, whole bunch of different character ideas you can throw in. Maybe another agent who gets sent along on a job with her or something like that. And again, you can do all sorts of fun and interesting things with this. This is me spitballing the broad outline of a season. I'm not getting into too many specifics. But yeah, and then the then the last few episodes are basically the build up to this plot of, is there a traitor? Is there, isn't there? Has somebody been taken over by an alien life form or something like that? And you build the tension and build the tension, and you genuinely don't want to know what's going on. This is an old school spy thriller to all intents and purposes, which of course means you need lots and lots of red herrings. So the obvious big oh my god twist is that the guy who originally went to her for help has actually been the villain all along and was just using her to try and work his way up the paywall effectively. That to me is too obvious a twist to the point where I'd want to do that as a double bluff. So you start thinking that he's actually been the traitor all along, and it turns out that having him be the traitor was actually a plan that he and the Doctor came up with in order to smoke out the real traitor. And again, old school spy storytelling. So you've got double crosses and triple crosses, and you just go somewhere fun and interesting with it, and eventually the traitor at the heart of the CIA is revealed. Or maybe it's one of the members of the High Council, or hell, maybe there isn't a traitor. Maybe somebody's been swapped out with a alien who can mimic a Time Lord, or again, all sorts of fun places you could go with it. But fundamentally, it should be a mystery, and there do need to have been clues leading up to it. The trouble is, I kind of don't trust the current writing staff to do that very subtly, but eventually, so that's what you do for the big grand finale, and you've got something fun like having to denounce the traitor in front of the entire sort of assembled Time Lord Council and things like that. You could have fun with a sequence like that. Maybe the traitors arranged for the Doctor to be executed in front of the entire council, and then she pulls a big big switcheroo reveal that everything's been building up to unmasking the traitor in front of the entire council or something like that. Again, spitballing ideas, but you could do some really, really fun, grandiose stuff with that. But so that's what I would do to bring the Time Lords back in and give us a really solid, interesting season arc that still also leaves a lot of room for individual stories and adventures. In there you've got some you've got some fun stuff with the human companions finding out some of the weirder stuff about Time Lord society, just being like, what? You do this? God, you people are weird. And so on and so forth. And you could also have some fun stuff with the Time Lords being arrogant dicks to all the companions, because Time Lords are arrogant dicks. That's just canon. I think there's a lot of potential in that idea, and that's pretty much all I've got for the broad overview. If you think that's a potentially interesting idea for a next season, great. If not, I'd love to hear your own thoughts on potentially bringing the Time Lords in. I'm going to be trying to get back into the habit of semi-regular vlogs again. I don't know how often I'll be doing it. I don't know what particular topics I'll be discussing. As ever, comment section is there if you'd like to suggest anything. And I'm just going to be kind of sitting in a chair and waffling. So, So thank you very much for watching, and hopefully I will see you in future videos.